Welcome to Medieval Tales. Before we dive into today's profoundly important story, drop a comment below and tell us which city are you watching from and what time is it there right now. There is something deeply wrong with the way we eat in modern times. Right now, over 98 million Americans are pre-diabetic. That means 1 in every 3 adults is walking around with blood sugar levels high enough to quietly damage their organs, nerves, and blood vessels over time. Another 37 million have full-blown type 2 diabetes. These numbers are climbing higher every single year, and doctors often treat it as though it is inevitable, as though it is simply what happens when you get older. But here is what nobody openly talks about. For over 1,000 years, medieval peasants ate every single day, 3 full meals, sometimes even more, and type 2 diabetes simply did not exist in their world. These were hard-working people performing brutal physical labor, living in harsh conditions with absolutely no access to modern medicine. Yet their blood sugar remained stable, their body weight stayed healthy, and they lived their lives without the chronic diseases that are slowly killing so many of us today. What did they know that we've completely forgotten? The answer is not what you might think. It is not about eating less. Medieval peasants ate plenty of food. It is about what they ate, when they ate it, and how their bodies were able to process it properly. And once you clearly see the stark difference, you will finally understand why modern food is no longer truly food anymore. It has become a slow-acting poison that the human body was never designed to handle. In 1986, a team of researchers from Cambridge University carried out something truly remarkable. They carefully analyzed over 800 skeletons recovered from medieval grave sites across England, with remains dating from the year 1100 all the way to 1500 AD. They were specifically looking for signs of metabolic disease, bone deformities caused by diabetes, unusual tooth decay patterns, and markers of chronic inflammation. What they discovered shocked them completely. Out of those 800 individuals, they found 0 evidence of diabetes, not a single case anywhere. They did find evidence of malnutrition in some skeletons, along with injuries and infections, but no diabetes, no insulin resistance, no metabolic syndrome whatsoever. These were ordinary common people, farmers, laborers, craftsmen. They were not wealthy. They did not have access to elite diets or special privileged foods. They simply ate what grew locally, what they could afford, and what centuries of tradition had taught them to eat. And their bodies functioned exactly the way human bodies are supposed to function. Compare that to today. If you walked into any room containing 800 Americans over the age of 45, roughly 300 of them would be either pre-diabetic or fully diabetic. That is a biological catastrophe on a massive scale, and it did not happen by accident. Before we go any further, drop a comment below. Have you personally been told that you are pre-diabetic or diabetic, or has someone very close to you received that diagnosis? What did your doctor say was the cause? Let us know in the comments, because what you are about to learn will challenge everything you have ever been told about blood sugar and diet. The first major difference lies in the type of grain that medieval people consumed. Bread was the absolute foundation of the medieval diet. A typical peasant could easily eat a pound or more of bread every single day. That sounds like a tremendous amount of carbohydrates, and indeed it was, but here is the crucial key. The grain they used was completely different from what we consume today. Medieval wheat was an ancient variety known as Einkorn or emmer. These are old heritage grains with a fundamentally different genetic structure than modern wheat. Einkorn, for example, has only 14 chromosomes. Modern wheat has 42. That genetic difference matters enormously. Modern wheat has been selectively bred over the past 60 years to contain much higher gluten content, to rise much faster during baking, to grow shorter stalks so it does not fall over in the wind, and to produce dramatically higher yields per acre. But these deliberate changes also caused it to digest completely differently inside the human body. Modern wheat breaks down into glucose incredibly fast. When you eat just one slice of modern white bread, Your blood sugar spikes higher and faster than if you had eaten pure table sugar. That is not an exaggeration. Scientific studies have carefully measured the glycemic response, and white bread actually scores higher than a typical candy bar. Medieval wheat was entirely different. Einkorn and emmer break down slowly. The starches are bound together in a much tighter matrix. Your digestive enzymes have to work harder and longer to access the glucose, so it is released gradually over several hours instead of all at once. This means no sudden blood sugar spike, no massive insulin surge, no crash an hour later that leaves you hungry again. Medieval peasants ate large amounts of bread and still felt full and satisfied for hours because the energy was released in a steady, controlled manner. Their pancreas did not have to dump enormous amounts of insulin to cope with a sudden glucose flood. Over an entire lifetime, this difference is absolutely everything. Constant insulin spikes eventually exhaust your pancreas, damage your cells, and lead directly to insulin resistance, the immediate precursor to diabetes. Steady, slow glucose release keeps your entire metabolic system balanced and healthy. We traded away that natural balance for convenience and higher crop yields. Modern wheat grows faster and cheaper, but it is quietly destroying our metabolic health. Then there is the way the grain was processed. Medieval bread was made from whole grain flour that was stone ground, often still containing bits of bran and germ. Nothing was removed. You ate the entire kernel. That meant plenty of fiber, lots and lots of fiber. Fiber dramatically slows digestion. It forms a thick gel in your stomach and intestines that delays the absorption of glucose. It also feeds your beneficial gut bacteria, which then produce short-chain fatty acids that actually improve insulin sensitivity. A typical serving of medieval bread contained 8 to 12 grams of fiber. Modern white bread contains less than 1 gram. Even modern whole wheat bread today is made from flour that has been milled so finely that it behaves almost exactly like white flour. The bran is pulverized into dust. It no longer slows digestion the way coarse intact fiber does. The result is that modern bread, even the darker kind that looks healthy, hits your bloodstream almost as quickly as refined sugar. Medieval peasants also ate bread that had been properly fermented, not the quick-rise commercial yeast we use today. They relied on sourdough starters containing wild yeast and beneficial bacteria that fermented the dough for 12 to 24 hours before baking. This long fermentation accomplished two vital things. First, it partially broke down some of the starches and made the bread far easier to digest. Second, it significantly lowered the glycemic index. Fermented bread releases glucose much more slowly than non-fermented bread made from the exact same flour. Studies conducted in the early 2000s directly compared sourdough bread to standard bread and found that sourdough caused a 25% lower blood sugar spike. Medieval bakers did not understand the science behind it, but they knew from generations of experience that slow fermented bread tasted better, stayed fresh longer, and kept people full and energized. They were accidentally optimizing their daily food for perfect metabolic health. Now, let us talk about what medieval peasants simply did not eat: concentrated sugar. They had almost none at all. Honey was the only real concentrated sweetener available, and it was expensive and rare. A peasant family might have one small pot of honey that lasted many months, used only sparingly on very special occasions. The rest of the time their food was not sweet at all. Vegetables, grains, meat, fish, dairy, none of it contained added sweetness. Compare that to today. The average American consumes 77 grams of added sugar per day. That equals 19 teaspoons every single day. It is hidden in bread, sauces, soups, salad dressings, yogurt, cereal, and drinks. You are eating sugar in foods you do not even think of as sweet, and your body simply cannot handle that load. Humans did not evolve to process 77 grams of pure sugar daily. When you consume that much sugar, your liver becomes overwhelmed. It converts the excess into fat and stores it directly in your liver and around your organs. This condition is called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and it has now reached epidemic levels in the United States. Fatty liver leads straight to insulin resistance and eventually diabetes. Medieval peasants never had this problem because they were not drowning their livers in fructose every single day. Let us talk about beverages next. Medieval peasants drank plain water, small beer, a very weak fermented barley drink containing less than 2% alcohol, and occasionally fresh milk. That was essentially it. No sodas, no fruit juices, no energy drinks, no flavored lattes loaded with syrups. When you drink liquid sugar, it hits your bloodstream far faster than when you eat solid food, because there is no fiber, no fat, and no protein to slow absorption. A single can of soda delivers 39 grams of sugar directly into your blood within minutes. Your pancreas panics and floods your entire system with insulin. This metabolic assault happens multiple times a day for millions of people. Medieval peasants drank beverages that contained zero or near zero sugar. Their blood sugar remained stable all day, every day, throughout their entire lives. Next comes meal timing and frequency. Medieval peasants typically ate 2 to 3 substantial meals a day. Breakfast, if they had one at all, was simple, perhaps bread with a little cheese or leftovers from the night before. The main meal came at midday after several hours of morning work. They called it dinner, and it was the largest meal of the day. Then they had a lighter supper in the evening. Between meals, they ate nothing at all. No snacks, no grazing, no constant nibbling. This natural pattern gave their bodies long, regular breaks between meals, periods where insulin levels could drop naturally, stored fat could be burned for energy, and cells could rest and repair themselves. Modern eating patterns are the complete opposite. We eat breakfast, then a mid-morning snack, then lunch, then an afternoon snack, then dinner, then dessert, and sometimes even a late-night snack. We are eating from the moment we wake up until the moment we go to bed. Insulin remains constantly elevated. Your body never gets a real chance to burn fat or properly reset. This constant eating, even if the individual foods were healthy, keeps insulin high and directly drives insulin resistance. Medieval eating patterns naturally supported perfect metabolic health. They did not snack because preparing food required real work, and you ate when the proper meal was ready. That accidental intermittent fasting between meals was one of the most powerful things they did for their long-term health. Let us talk about vegetables. Medieval peasants ate a tremendous amount of them: cabbage, onions, leeks, turnips, peas, beans, kale, carrots. These were boiled, baked, or turned into thick, hearty stews. Vegetables were inexpensive, filling, and helped stretch more expensive ingredients like meat. A typical peasant meal was a large bowl of pottage, a thick stew made from vegetables, grains, and just a little meat or fat for flavor. This was eaten alongside coarse bread. The vegetables supplied abundant fiber, essential vitamins, and minerals. But more importantly, they provided volume and bulk without excessive calories. You felt physically full without overloading your system with glucose. Modern diets are the complete opposite: extremely high calorie density with very low fiber. A single fast food meal can deliver 1,200 calories in just a few bites and still leave you hungry an hour later because there is no fiber, no bulk, nothing to properly signal your brain that you are actually full. Medieval food had real physical volume. A bowl of pottage was large and substantial. It took time to eat, and it kept you genuinely full for hours. You were not driven to snack because your stomach was truly satisfied and your blood sugar remained stable. Now let us address meat. Medieval peasants did eat meat, but not every single day. Meat was expensive and represented real wealth. A chicken, a pig, or a cow was a major investment, so meat was used carefully and sparingly. A family might slaughter a pig in the autumn and preserve the meat through salting, smoking, or curing. That single pig could last many months. They would use small amounts of meat mixed into stews, primarily for flavor, not as the central component of every meal. Compare that to today, where many people eat meat 2 or even 3 times a day. Breakfast sausage, a deli sandwich for lunch, a large steak for dinner. The problem is not meat itself. It is the sheer quantity and the poor quality. Medieval meat came from animals that grazed freely on pasture, ate natural grass, and moved around constantly. The fat composition was very different. much higher in anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids, and lower in pro-inflammatory omega-6. Modern factory-farmed meat comes from animals fed unnatural grain diets, often corn and soy, kept in confined spaces, and routinely given antibiotics. The fat is heavily skewed toward inflammatory omega-6. Chronic inflammation is a major direct driver of insulin resistance. Medieval peasants consumed small amounts of high-quality meat. We consume large amounts of low-quality inflammatory meat. That difference compounds dramatically over decades. Then there is dairy. Medieval peasants did consume dairy, but it was raw, unpasteurized, and almost always fermented. Cheese, buttermilk, curds, fresh milk spoiled quickly, so it was usually transformed into something longer-lasting. Fermentation dramatically reduces lactose, the natural sugar in milk, and introduces beneficial bacteria. Hard cheese, for example, has almost no lactose remaining. It is essentially pure fat and protein. Fat and protein do not spike blood sugar. Medieval dairy was a stable blood sugar-friendly food source. Modern dairy is completely different. It is pasteurized, homogenized, and very often low-fat or fat-free. When you remove the fat, you are left with proportionally more lactose, which is sugar. Skim milk actually has more sugar per serving than whole milk because the balancing fat has been stripped away. Flavored yogurts are frequently loaded with added sugar. A single serving of fruit-flavored yogurt can contain 20 grams of sugar. Medieval peasants consumed full-fat fermented dairy with zero added sugar. We consume low-fat sweetened dairy products that actively spike blood sugar. Yet another metabolic disaster cleverly disguised as health food. Another crucial factor: legumes. Beans, lentils, and peas were absolute staples of the medieval diet. They were cheap, extremely filling, and packed with both protein and fiber. A large bowl of lentil stew served with bread constituted a complete, satisfying meal. Legumes have a naturally low glycemic index. They release glucose slowly and steadily. They also contain resistant starch, a type of carbohydrate that the human body cannot fully digest. Resistant starch feeds beneficial gut bacteria and directly improves insulin sensitivity. Medieval peasants ate legumes almost daily. Modern Americans eat them very rarely. We have largely replaced beans with pasta, white rice, and bread made from refined grains. Even when we do eat beans, they are often canned varieties loaded with added sugar and excessive salt. The dramatic shift away from legumes is one of the most underappreciated dietary changes of the past century. Legumes are among the very best foods for blood sugar control, and we have nearly eliminated them from our daily plates. Physical activity plays a part in the story, but not exactly the way most people think. Yes, medieval peasants worked extremely hard, farming, hauling heavy loads, building, walking many miles every day. But the real key is not simply that they burned a lot of calories. It is that their muscles were in near constant motion throughout the day. When your muscles contract regularly, they pull glucose directly out of your bloodstream without requiring insulin. This is known as non-insulin-mediated glucose uptake. The more active your muscles are all day long, the better your body handles glucose overall. Medieval peasants did not sit motionless for 8 hours and then go to a gym for 30 minutes. They moved continuously from morning until evening. Modern sedentary lifestyles mean your muscles are not pulling glucose out of your blood. It just sits there, bathing your cells in excess sugar and forcing your pancreas to work overtime constantly. Exercise certainly helps, but it cannot fully compensate for 10 hours of complete inactivity. Daily movement needs to be constant and natural, not intense and brief. Another factor that almost nobody discusses is sleep. Medieval peasants went to bed when the sun went down and woke naturally with the sunrise. There was no artificial light, no screens, no blue light disrupting melatonin production. Sleep is absolutely critical for proper blood sugar regulation. Poor sleep can cause insulin resistance within just a few days. A single night of bad sleep can reduce your insulin sensitivity by 25%. Medieval peasants enjoyed deep, restorative sleep every single night because their environment naturally supported it. We are chronically sleep-deprived, staring at screens until midnight, consuming caffeine to stay awake, and then wondering why our blood sugar is completely out of control. Sleep deprivation is a major but underappreciated driver of the modern diabetes epidemic. Let us talk about stress as well. Medieval life was undeniably hard, but it followed a predictable rhythm: work during daylight hours, rest at night, clear seasonal cycles, harvest time, winter rest, spring planting. There were no constant emails, no 24-hour news cycles, no financial markets crashing overnight while you slept. Chronic psychological stress raises cortisol levels, which directly raises blood sugar and promotes insulin resistance. Modern life is filled with constant low-grade stresses: financial pressure, overwhelming work demands, information overload, endless social comparison on social media. Your body remains in a perpetual state of fight or flight. Cortisol stays chronically elevated, blood sugar stays chronically elevated. Over many years, this steadily wears your entire system down. Then there is the food supply itself. Medieval food was always local. It came from within just a few miles of where you lived. It was strictly seasonal. You ate whatever was naturally available that month, and it was always whole and unprocessed. Nothing was refined, chemically altered, or artificially preserved. Modern food is heavily industrialized, grown thousands of miles away, picked unripe, shipped in refrigerated trucks, sprayed with preservatives, and genetically engineered for long shelf life rather than nutrition. The overall nutrient density collapsed dramatically. A modern tomato contains only a fraction of the vitamins and minerals it had 50 years ago because the soil is depleted and varieties are bred for appearance and transport durability, not nutritional value. Medieval food was genuinely nutrient-dense because the soil was healthy and regenerative. The plants grew slowly in natural conditions, and nothing was selectively bred purely for convenience. When your daily food is nutrient-poor, your body remains hungry on a cellular level. You end up eating more and more trying to obtain the nutrients you actually need, but you only get more empty calories. This directly drives overeating and weight gain, which then drive insulin resistance. The most disturbing part of this entire story is that the modern medical establishment treats diabetes as though it is inevitable. They tell you to simply manage it rather than reverse it. They prescribe medications that artificially lower your blood sugar, but do absolutely nothing to fix the underlying root cause. And they almost never discuss what medieval peasants ate or how they lived. Why? Because the real solution is not profitable. You cannot patent fresh vegetables, ancient whole grains, and long daily walks. But you can patent expensive drugs. So the entire system pushes drugs and repeatedly tells you that diabetes is genetic. It is just aging, it is bad luck. It is none of those things. It is the food, it is the modern lifestyle, and both can be changed. If you truly want to eat like a medieval peasant and restore your metabolic health, here is exactly what you should do. Eat whole grains, real, minimally processed ancient grains. If you can find Einkorn or emmer flour, use it whenever possible. If not, buy the coarsest whole grain flour available and always make proper sourdough. Let it ferment for a full 24 hours. Eliminate all added sugar completely, no sodas, no sweetened foods of any kind, no hidden sugars in sauces or processed products. If it tastes artificially sweet and it is not fresh fruit, simply do not eat it. Eat large portions of vegetables at every single meal. Fill at least half your plate with them. Eat legumes every day: beans, lentils, chickpeas. They are inexpensive and extraordinarily powerful for blood sugar control. Eat meat sparingly, only a few times a week, not at every meal. Whenever possible, choose pasture-raised or grass-fed. Consume full-fat dairy, preferably fermented varieties, real cheese, plain unsweetened yogurt, kefir. Stop snacking entirely. Eat only 2 or 3 proper meals a day and absolutely nothing in between. Move your body constantly throughout the day. Walk regularly. Work with your hands. Stay naturally active all day long, not just one short gym session. Sleep when it gets dark. Turn off all screens early. Use blackout curtains, and prioritize a full 8 hours every night. Reduce stress wherever possible. Disconnect from the endless news cycle. Spend real time in nature. Build genuine community with people around you. These are not extreme or radical measures. This is exactly how humans lived successfully for thousands of years. And it worked perfectly. The science completely backs this up. Studies on traditional diets, the Mediterranean diet, the Okinawan diet, various hunter-gatherer diets, all show the exact same pattern. When people eat whole, unprocessed foods and live naturally active lives, diabetes is virtually non-existent. But when those same populations adopt a modern Western industrial diet, diabetes explodes within a single generation. This pattern has been observed and documented in every population it has been tested in. The Japanese had almost no diabetes until they began eating large amounts of Western processed food. The Pima Indians in Arizona had no diabetes whatsoever when they followed their traditional diet. Then they switched to white flour, sugar, and heavily processed foods, and now over 50% of their adult are diabetic. It is not genetics, it is the food and the modern lifestyle. If you are getting real value from this, hit that like button and subscribe right now. We are pulling back the curtain on the lies that the food industry and the medical system keep telling you. The medieval peasant sitting quietly at his simple table with coarse bread, plenty of vegetables, a hearty stew, and clean water was not suffering. He was genuinely healthy. His body worked exactly the way it was designed to work. He did not count calories, track macros, or take daily medications. He simply ate real food, worked hard with his hands, and lived a natural life. That is not primitive. That is true wisdom. We traded away that hard-earned wisdom for modern convenience, and it is slowly killing us. Every single piece of serious metabolic research points to the exact same conclusion. Whole, unprocessed foods, steady blood sugar levels, constant natural movement, deep sleep, and low chronic stress. That is the complete formula for lifelong health. Medieval peasants lived that formula every day without even knowing the science behind it. We now know the science perfectly well, but we are not living it. The real question is, will you start? Subscribe, and let's keep digging deeper together.